let me open this video about a family movie with a perfectly suitable question. Have you, dear viewer, ever been absolutely convinced that you were about to die? It's a moment that short-circuits your entire brain, your most primal evolutionary instinct firing off through every nerve in your body. It's universally accepted as a life-changing moment for any normal person. But, as such, impossible to reconcile for someone with, say, multiple lives. That's what's so interesting about Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. It seems like it's a story about the meaning of life, but it's not. It's a story about the meaning of death. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is a sequel to the 2011 film Puss in Boots, and also all the Shrek movies, I think. This takes place at an obfuscated point on the timeline and has almost nothing to do with anything else, because it spent so long in development hell that it was gracefully released from the bounds of franchise sloppitude. There's no shortage of stories about how immortality is a curse more than a blessing. The immortal, Tuck Everlasting, the Epic of Gilgamesh, kind of, the Cthulhu episode of South Park, even the relative immortality of having 9 lives and a lot of denial doesn't make this any kind of reinventing of the wheel. It's a subtle but pervasive difference in tone that the framing of Puss in Boots' story is not one of demystifying immortality and learning that life is beautiful only because it's fleeting. Instead, immortality is the default. We find Puss in Boots embracing the role of outlaw hero in the Badlands of Spain, robbing the rich, giving to the poor, fucking up monsters, and hitting on beautiful Spanish women. The good life, the life he deserves, as all great Hispanic men do. Until he gets crushed by a bell. This marks Puss in Boots' 8th death, and for what it's worth, I love this montage. Every death is hubris of the highest order, and besides being pretty funny, actually sets up what Puss has allowed his flexible mortality to turn him into. There's very little fat on this script. Anyway, what this means is Puss is on his last life, his only true mortal life. And that's a real bummer for him. In fact, it completely breaks him almost immediately. It's not even about wanting to live or die, it's about perceiving death as it is. Death is cheap, death comes quickly. He already knows that, but it doesn't have any meaning if it's just a concept in contrast to life as it is. Puss in Boots does not get to die until he sees himself as mortal. To go from seeing yourself as a living story to seeing yourself as a literally living body is an exercise in not just mortal fear, but existential horror. It's just so very suddenly something real, something terrifying, something the internet can latch onto and aggressively sexualize. Let me be clear. I don't think there's anything wrong with people being horny for the wolf. Ours is not to judge. Ours is not to so much as reason why. Ours is but to do and die, which, as I said before, is very much the point. The introduction of death immediately after Puss learns he's on his last life is an absolute banger of an entrance. It does not fuck around, especially in comparison to the wacky action scene in the prologue. It's very much on purpose, in fact, is designed to make Puss look not just suddenly aware of his own mortality, but suddenly incompetent because of it. Even the way this fight plays out, it looks like the first time someone has ever been in a real fight. It's unchoreographed, it's over immediately. For the first time in his life, Puss is a body, a fragile, mushy, mortal vessel. The laws of physics suddenly apply again. Talk is cheap, mistakes are costly, and Puss is so terrified that he's being played with in an eerily similar manner to the way he used to play with his own food. Death is still a concept, a force of nature, larger than life and technically perfect. Puss in Boots is just a guy now. Now, death, not like the character death, but the actual act of mortal creatures dying, now becomes a really weird motif for the rest of the story. It happens a lot. Like this is a lot of on-screen death for a modern family movie, and it can be pretty gruesome. It's functionally pretty goofy, because this is still a family movie, but there's no other way to put it. The action is all shot like a war movie. It's claustrophobic and chaotic, usually affixed to Puss's perspective. He's living in fear, so when one of the baker's dozen literally explodes, it looks pretty funny, but it's framed as fucking terrifying, because that could have been me. There's this constant push and pull between irreverence and horror being played out throughout the story. It's the same reason there's 3 antagonists. Goldilocks is too decent, Jack Horner is too malevolent, but death is death, and fear of death is universal. Except for Jack, kind of. Actually, he seems pretty chill with it for the whole story, and I have to admit that doesn't really fit my point, but he's evil. Shut up. The peak of this comes when Puss runs off in the middle of a fight and has a panic attack in the woods. This scene went viral. People gushed, others inevitably dogpiled on people liking something. It had a lot to do with the terrible Velma show airing the worst panic attack scene in the history of fiction like a few weeks before. It's very realistic. It's well done. The act of it, though, isn't that important. What's important is that it is both deserved and equally consequential. Any idiot can research what a panic attack looks and feels like. I guess any idiot except Mindy Kaling, but I'm not here to dunk on a canceled TV show. It takes a certain amount of talent to justify one on either end, to not make a Twitter-pleasing spectacle of it. Kids can learn from this, and it's a credit to this scene that something is gained from its involvement, but it doesn't exist just to be solved. Puss is experiencing death for the first time as a mortal. He's watching other people die around him, suddenly gone, a million other ways to die standing between him and the thing he wants. No matter how badly he wants that wish, his body is for the first time truly overriding. He's not just getting his ass kicked this time, he's actually losing control. When death shows up outside of the pie factory, Puss is already mostly safe. This time, death shows up in the middle of the chaos, and Puss comes to understand that he's being somewhat literally followed by it. Comfort calms him, offers him perspective, but it doesn't undo the damage. A panic attack, like a real one, is a little bit like a realistic nightmare. The physical passing of it brings you back down to earth. Your heart rate slows and you regain control. But there's this weird impression of it stuck in the back of your head for a long time, like the outline of a light burned into the inside of your eyelids. It stays with you, and it can affect your decision-making for hours or even days. The panic attack scene does 2 things: teaches Puss the meaning of life, and solidifies his misunderstanding of the meaning of death. While it helps him grasp the importance of connection and the futility of glory, it also validates his fear. In becoming less obsessed with regaining his status as a legend, he becomes more obsessed with simply not dying. The man, or I guess cat, Puss in Boots, is a coward, a selfish glory hound with no interest in his own mortality, his own place in the world. He was never literally immortal, he just lived in denial for subconscious fear of rooting himself in anything real, lest he be hurt or killed or have his nebulous meaning as a legend stolen from him by the harsh reality of life. In the words of everyone who knows him, he's always running, because if you ever stop, life, and by extension death, catches up to you. This sets him up to betray his friends out of sheer desperation in the Cave of Lost Souls. It's a kind of moving the goalposts in that death serves as the opposite of a deus ex machina, but that's what makes it work. The metaphor is dropped in the name of the greater theme that death is such a real and inescapable thing. In that Puss has unequivocally become a better version of himself, he can let his past go. But he still can't let his future go. He looks like he's learned his lesson until death shows up, but that's the thing. The lesson here isn't that immortality is great, it never really was. It's just that mortality is terrible. Again, subtle but pervasive difference. Death is terrible, death is scary. Death doesn't wait for you, it hunts for you. It will chase you from the day you are born, across the meaningless landscape of your existence, all the way to the end of the earth. And when you turn around to face it, you will find yourself all alone. So, knowing that, why run at all? One of my favorite scenes in this movie is when Puss buries his outfit and throws himself a pathetic little funeral. It starts off played as a joke, but it evolves into a sort of a false theme for the whole story. This idea that to kill one's legacy is the ultimate death of the self. But it works because, as the story goes on, it becomes clear that Puss in Boots is not really a self. Puss in Boots does not get to die until he finally separates himself from his legacy. It's sort of inexorably linked to his fear of death. I don't want to run back too much ground here. I love that he loses his sword in the opening and never gets it back until death forces it on him. I love that he has to learn to use a new weapon and that it's a gift from Kitty, but also kind of an insult. But I think the punctuation here is the final battle. Not against death. That's pretty self-explanatory, and it's a banger, but I mean against Jack. You would think at the start that this story should have Jack dealt with, and then Puss forced to deal with death, because as it were, death is the true antagonist. It works the other way, because functionally, fighting death is still the climax. Killing Jack is part of the resolution. In fighting death, Puss's current life, being the only one flashing before his eyes, solidifies, within the metaphor, that this is his only real life, because it's the only one where he can die, so it's the only one with any real meaning. In risking his life to fight Jack, in outright refusing the wish, and in fact helping to destroy it, Puss in Boots finally self-actualizes. The same person, and yet fundamentally different, at peace with his fear of death because he finally has something worth dying for. Being a hero and being heroic are not the same thing, just like how being adored and being loved are not the same thing, just like how having a purpose and living with purpose are not the same thing. The Last Wish is a story about how fulfillment can become a paradox. If we matter because we affect the lives of others, it's easy to see it as a quantifiable thing, and then conflate legacy with meaning and meaning with self. If I am forgotten, did I ever matter? Is there anything to life besides mattering to as many people as possible for as long as possible? Is it truly possible to leave anything behind when this rock will continue to spin until our descendants' are nothing but bones in the ground? Am I getting too abstract? I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. What's interesting about that statement is that I could pretty much always get hit by a bus tomorrow. That sentence will exist, unaltered and technically true, in the confines of this video, which I have left behind, until the day I die, or until DreamWorks copyright claims it. As something I have created, this video is a part of my legacy, but it is, as everything I make, alive in a sense. It does not strictly add to my worth. Its view count and like ratio and comments and ad revenue do not make it any more or less glorious than anything else I've done for the public or for my friends or for myself. Its context will change as I grow and change. My thoughts and feelings on death and art and the sound of my voice will one day mutate the raw meaning of this text beyond any semblance of value. Nothing left to look back on but the bygone impression of the joy of creation, to know that I did this because I wanted to, and it meant something to me at the time. That has to be enough, because what the fuck else are any of us doing? The inevitability of death is what gives life meaning, but the inability to satisfy legacy is what gives death meaning. We're all gonna die, and that's scary. It's okay to be scared of it. I'm scared of it. We're supposed to be scared of it. But to rail against that, to seek meaning, that drive to exist beyond the mere concept of life and death, is in itself the value of death. There is no chicken without the egg. There is no means without an end. Death gives us the gift of knowing that progress is a fallacy. When there is no point in running, all that's left is to face it every day without fail and walk along the path anyway, no matter how frightening it is. There is nothing else in life's meaning but to fight for the one life you have. And I know it's hard when you're awaiting death as such a mad, sexy Hispanic wolf, but honey, you have to try.